Hey guys, what's up? Kaylee here with Gravitas Create. Today we're fortunate enough to have Halfred all the way from Italy.
Hey guys.
Welcome.
Thanks a lot.
So happy to have you here. Today he's going to be dropping some serious knowledge on his approach to sound design, which basically lets chaos and randomness create unexpected, unusual, and basically impossible sounds to create otherwise, that we can then cut up, edit, and use to spice up our beats and our bass lines and create glitchy, intricate, cybernetic, mechanical, organic sounds. That's the best way I can explain it.
Yeah.
It's been really wonderful watching Halfred produce the past few days. I've learned a lot. I get the feeling that I'm watching someone paint more than produce. It's amazing how he uses the computer to work for him. And lazy intelligence, it's good, it's efficient. So without further ado, let's take a look at Halfred's techniques.
So first of all, we are gonna start from a serum patch, which I have already prepared for the occasion. And I'll let you hear first and then we comment it a bit. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of modulation going on. Basically, these LFOs are linked to a bunch of parameters, especially the volumes, the drive, the cutoff and stuff. This other LFO is linked to another bunch of other parameters. So basically, you can create this kind of sounds starting from different kind of patches, but the more modulation is going on, the more crazier the sounds will be. So, let's jump into it. So the magic comes from a device which I've recently discovered. It's called Device Randomizer from Max for Live. So I just type random inside the library. It's a audio effect, and I drag it next to the device I want to randomize. Okay. So if I try pressing randomize and then clicking on serum, nothing works because it's a third-party plugin. So I've got first to choose a bunch of parameters to assign to the randomization. So first I'm gonna dive into the patch and see which are the fundamental values to assign to it. So let's first click on configure. And then I'm gonna look inside the patch and try assign the most important stuff. So one of the first thing I see is because here's already randomizing stuff and I don't want that. Okay, let's do it again. Okay. So first, before randomizing stuff, we need to configure our synth, and we start, for example, from the LFO rate of the LFO1, which is linked to a lot of stuff. So we click on that and we see that it appears here. Then we can choose the LFO rate 2, LFO rate 3. Then we can choose the cutoff, the resonance, the kind of warping mode of the wavetable. So we choose the wavetable position of the different two oscillators. So till now I selected 9 parameters, and I can choose up to 16, which is the maximum. Then I can choose octave, the other octave, and then I can go into the effects. I got a phaser going on, so I may choose the frequency of the phaser and the feedback as well. And let's see, I've got 3 left. I will choose the second cutoff and the resonance. So 1 left, and we can choose, let's see, the mixing of the phase. Okay, so now we got all these things set up, and we have to randomize them. And it's pretty simple because we just need to click on map before and then click on the header of the VST. But before doing that, we have to take care of a couple of controls that we have given. And these are the frequency of randomization, which can be free rate or synced to the beats. So it can be more rhythmically based. And then the random frequency modulation, which is basically the amount of craziness which is added to the already random modulation. And it's like Ableton explains it. And so now we are gonna test our patch and see what's gonna happen with different values in this area, and see how we can then manipulate these kind of sounds into something more like manageable, because as you will hear, a lot of crazy sounds and also a lot of crap will come out, but the idea is like to create a very long chunk of audio and then start to like choose which are the best parts and then save them into the library and use them in your future projects. So let's start right now with it. So I click on map before, and then I click on serum. Okay, so before seeing it works, we have to press play. So we just okay, let's see what happens when I press a note. Okay, as you can see, nothing happens because I haven't pressed play, but now, as you can see, all the parameters that I've configured before are now moving like crazy, and they are moving like based on the random frequency that I've decided to give. So I can make it like slower, like every 1 beat. I cannot sync it to the beat and like leave it like a free rate mode. So basically my approach is like to create a really long piece of audio, like ranging from 5 to 10 minutes, something like that, and let the computer do the stuff for me, like in ways that I wouldn't do in the same way, because I rarely like automate 16 parameters all together, and my answer too. And I mean, you can do as automation as possible, but it's a cool approach to actually save you that time, and the time you spent more is like more analyzing the sound and getting the best results that you you can get out of it. So let's try record like a longer sample. So first I'm gonna make a long clip. 32 bars may work for us. Okay, it's not important which note I'm gonna make, since I've already linked the octave, so every time it will be changing. So let's start. I put the second channel, I put it on resampling mode, then record, and then let's go with it. Yeah, actually with this technique I've created a lot of sounds before using the same patch, and you can see like here what I got so far. It's some just example of the possibility, because every time the randomization acts in a complete different way, so the results are always different. This was one of the sounds. So as you can see, there are some cool things and some which are hardly usable. And so that is like the first step of this process and this approach. So the next step will be like to create something like maybe more rhythmic out of these long samples, and so to be able to link them to a tempo, to a beat, whatever. And we have different approaches to and different ways to do that, and we are gonna show it right now. Okay, so one way I have to like create a single sound out of this sample is to use the beats mode and use the transient stuff and put it on 132, and then put it is to 0, and then let's see what's happened like this. You got more rhythmic stuff going on. So nothing special, but more rhythmic than before. So for example, I got a bit going on. Let's see how it works over there, just to have a clue of what's going on. So what I usually do is like create different clips, starting maybe with the same one, and then I enter inside of every clip and put it on loop mode, and so I can be able to move the cursor around and be able to take different parts of the long loop. So what I usually do is like put a very short loop and keep it going until I'm happy with the sequence of sound that are usually into it. So I'll just try with that. Then in this one we could have something more different, because in this one, if you remember, we used the beats mode on 32, so we got basically all 32 notes. So a cool way will be to, for example, use different colors for different patterns, so we can know that the green ones are the 32 ones and the yellow ones are the 16, so we can visually see what's the rhythm and what's going on in the beat. So that's an approach to link those kind of sound to the beat. Another thing that I usually make to create even more randomization out of these long samples is to import these samples into a simpler, actually. Let's try with I don't know which one. Let's try with this. And I have to reference to this technique to Mr. Bill, and actually I saw the first time I didn't understand what was going on, because it was like, wow. And it's pretty simple, the idea, because actually from the most recent version of Simpler you can link, for example, the starting position to an LFO. So basically you can always trigger your clip from a different point, and especially if you got a very long samples, it's very useful because it gives you the possibility to basically have a different sound every time and trigger the sounds in a rhythmic way. So it gives you like a way to move from the initial chaos to a sort of order. So let's see which, okay. So usually I start with like 2-3 LFOs. What I'm doing is use the classic mode of Simpler, and the first LFO I usually map it to the starting position over there. So, and let's slow it down. So as you can see, every moment is starting from a different point. But the cool part is like to use the random LFO, because this is the general concept of everything. So you got like every time you can see it's more like stepped, and you can smooth out the randomization with the smooth parameter, so it's not so like jumpy from one point to the other. And you can choose also the rate to be slower, so it's more subtle. So I could like make like a rhythmic patch out of this, like let's see how it sounds. So as you can hear, every time the notes is triggered, every time the sample starts from a different point. But we can go even further and map the other LFOs to other parameters, which can be one, the length of the loop. So every time the loop is sometimes is shorter and sometimes longer, and especially is being the loop mode activated, it changes a lot sometimes the timbre of the loop when it gets very short and gets like a loop in itself. So let's see what happened with this activated. Okay, so basically from this process we have created this long loop, and now it's the moment of editing has arrived in. So what I usually do is like place the whole loop in the arrangement mode. So I've just got a basic beat going on, very basic. So just have a listen to it. Okay. So okay. What I do is like to import like a part of this long clip. It doesn't matter which part, because I'm actually going to decide which part of the long clip I'm gonna use. So just place in there as a placeholder. I'm gonna zoom in. Then it's already on loop mode, so I can basically move around the clip. And now I choose the part that fits more to the rhythm. So let's start with this. So I'm just going to try to find something that works. No, I mean, this doesn't work. This can. As you can see, all these transients going on, they came up from the fastness of the LFO, which sometimes they go so fast they create like sort of audio range stuff. So for example, I can see one sound here as a single one, so maybe, and then the tail of it, I don't like it, so I'm not using it. And then maybe I just put it like on the left here, like ready to be used. Then I'm just trying to see what are the good sounds inside it. Yeah, like that one. So maybe I give another color to this and put it here. And then I'm going to, because this kind of approach is like create the chaos and then starting to explore and which are the best thing that came out of from this chaotic situation. I like the first two. Let's give another color to this. Then I'm gonna find a couple more. This is the frog, so I keep it. This is cool for transition. Okay, so let's see. Then I just copy the same one to the next bit, and I start like digging into it to create some variation. And sometimes I just mute the things, so I start like focusing one each time. And I like to zoom in, so. I can reverse it and have all different sounds. Oh. So basically I got so far this. Then I keep going. And then it's more a matter of entering to the flow, which sometimes you come up with some very good happy accident, and it's more matter of that. Because I'm not like choosing, okay, I want this, because it's more matter of like finding and be also lucky on this stuff, kind of predicting a bit. For example, here I can see something work, not everything, so maybe cut it up. Yeah. So we can change this one. And then we change this one. So I may need, for example, I can see from the Voxengo span that I may need to I pass it a bit, since we got tons of flows which should be replaced with the bass. Then I can, for example, if I'm happy with this sort of loop, I can duplicate it, consolidate, so I've got like a loop, and then I can start messing around like a bit more and see if I come up with, because the possibilities are really infinite. It's more just a matter of taking the time to explore them. just changing real quick some of this part. Now I'm gonna change them without even knowing and trying and see what happens, like just seeing from the waveforms what's gonna happen. Maybe a mess, maybe cool. So just changing the pointers of starting, it will change the whole loop. Let's see what happens. So let's see in context. Thanks for watching, it was a pleasure, and I hope that you guys gonna come out with some really weird sounds with this technique, and I will really be grateful and glad to listen to them. So please send them over and share these things.